author, want to write books and whatnot. I just need to know, like, was it something in your life, like what you went through, or the inspiration aspect of different books you have read in the previous years, in your past years? What gave you that inspiration to want to be an author?
Good question. How did the author piece get started? It's really a combination. What immediately got me started with wanting to write is that I used to be a contributing writer for one of the online magazines called Examiner, and they shut down in 2016. So I knew I wanted to continue writing, but I knew that writing an article, while in principle writing is writing, but writing an article is different than writing a book. So I reached out to two colleagues of mine who had published to kind of get their feedback on what it would take for me to kind of stretch my writing. There was a book which I had started in 2016, which was going to be a collection of political essays. However, I made the cardinal mistake of just saving it on my hard drive and not on my external or the cloud. So when my computer crashed, I lost that manuscript. So side note, please back up your work. I learned that lesson. But after saying a few 4 and 5 letter words that I will not repeat for about 10, 15 minutes after a crash, it kind of hit me that maybe that wasn't supposed to be my first book. So my second book, I'd always planned on it being a poetry book. So the first book that I actually published, that was the poetry book that was supposed to be the second. But beyond that, gosh, there's so many inspirations regarding writing. And we talked about this earlier with some of the staff. I was about to say, works by Dr. Maya Angelou. I know why the Cage Bird sings. The late Ralph Wiley, he used to write for Sports Illustrated. He used to be on the ESPN show, The Sports Reporters, with Why Black People Tend to Shout, and what Black people need to do now, Voices from the Vanguard. Authors like Nathan McCall, Zora Neale Hurst, and even classic artists like William Blake, Songs of Innocence, Songs of Experience, where it's a life event, but it's done through the vantage point of how a child may view it compared to how an adult may view it. So those were probably the inspirations, and in regards to getting into writing, but definitely a great question. So definitely a combination of extending the writing I was already doing, different books that I read that really had an impact on me, and even today, like when I read colleagues' books, it's about to say Phoenix Blue, who's based out of Chicago, and a couple others, it's like, those are things that kind of, keep you motivated. I'm sure on the music end, there's different artists that you listen to or peers who are DJs, so it's like, yeah, I like how his or her energy is, or how they connect with the crowd, and what can I do to even hone my skills. So that's a very good question. Okay. Another question, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, let's see, Ms. Walker, do you have a question for me? Of course.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned that you've written your 4th book. Do you foresee any new books in your future?
That's a great question. Any person who writes says that you're always working on something, and it's true. I'm always working on something. I feel like sometime in the not so distant future is when I'll drop the next one. I'm excited about it because it's kind of pulling off of different styles that I've used before, and I think it'll be just another creative piece. Of course, you're always thinking about what's ahead in regards to, do you want to do something that is, I don't know, sports related? Do you want to do another piece similar to 9 Stories that's another round of stories of testimony? Do you want to do something totally unexpected and off the grid? So the only thing I'll say that there's something that is coming on the horizon. You'll just have to stay tuned to find out when it will be. But good question, because like honestly, some people who write, you have to understand writing is long term. It's not immediate. And I think what some people do who write a book, they put it out, and they think everyone's going to gravitate towards it, and it doesn't work that way. It takes time, and a great example of taking time is for people who know the Harry Potter series. those books have been out for like almost 10 years before the right set of eyes caught it, and then it just blew up, basically. So, you know, I'll say this. Knowing that this is an extension of who I am and what I do, I'm going to continue to. And I'm glad that I'm versatile with my style. I'm not a poet, but I can do poetry. I'm not, let's say, necessarily the counselor, but I can do counseling type work. You know, based on what I've done in sports coverage, I can do that. So I think the beauty is I can move anywhere I see fit. It's just a matter of timing and those types of things. But great question. Okay, all of you have some good questions. Who's next, and what question would you like to ask?
Nikki. Okay. Yeah, ask the question. Yeah. My question is, I know you said you think about coming out with the product.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about that. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to dive in a little bit on the coffee piece and how that works. So back in August of 2018, so here's the backstory. I had just been a participating author for the Mississippi Book Festival in August of 2018, and I already planned on going to Louisville, Kentucky. So I made the drive from Jackson, Mississippi to southwestern Kentucky to visit with relatives of mine, and I knew the end of the week I was planning on going to Louisville, Kentucky to attend the Funk Festival, which different old, I'll say 90s R&B, hip-hop artists. My cousin, who's no longer with us, Keith Pepper, his management company, LA Keith Entertainment, did all the marketing and promotions for that. So I already planned on going to that concert. So what I did is totally transparent. I reached out to the alumni club before I went to college, who's based in Louisville, Kentucky, and I simply asked, hey, look, can you give me a list of coffee houses to where I could probably reach out to them and do a book signing? About 20 minutes later, I got an email about 6 recommendations. Of the 6 recommendations, there's only 2 that I got in contact with. The first one, I left a message, I talked to one of the staff, left a message, never got a call back. The second one, I left a message, I got an email back an hour later from the owner saying, you bring whoever you want to my coffee house. And it happened to be Fonte's Coffee. So August 2018, the very first book signing I did in Louisville was at Fonte's Coffee. Fast forward, we periodically kept in touch, and it's kind of almost like how Nike is with Jordan. That's kind of how I look at it with Fonte's. The owner reached out and said, hey, we have an interest in doing something with you. And that's how the AuthorASnorton blend really came into being. And it started off with the medium roast, which actually debuted in late October of 2022. May of 2023 is when we would release the light roast, which is ideal for this, for the spring and summer. That was also the same weekend. The day before we did that drop was when we actually buried my cousin. Long story on that. Then we ended up dropping the bourbon infused. Take that back. We dropped the decaf, which is actually a dark roast, later on that year, and originally just did the bourbon infused for the holidays only. But we found that of the 4 within the AuthorASnorton blend, which all of them are great, but the 2 that move the most are the medium roast because it's a great catch-all for any palate, and then the bourbon infused, which I have to do a shameless plug.
That's it.
They have done something with this old-fashioned. They named Maracas Bar, you need to go check it out, which is really, really good. So, and of course, like I have to explain to people, the alcohol gets roasted off in the roasting process. Please don't roll up on me with your flask or anything along those lines. I can't help you on that end. But those are the 4. Now, would we want to delve into other things like tea or things along those lines? I think there's a possibility, and I think there's an audience for it. I think tea provides a welcome change of pace.
Yes.
So we'll put our heads together and see what we come up with, but I'm just gonna say if there's something that can drop, leaves fall in the fall. I'm just gonna say that, leaves fall in the fall. I'm gonna keep it there, leaves fall in the fall.
That's a bar. That's a bar.
That's it.
All right, that might be a good hashtag, leaves fall in the
Very
fall.
well said.
So, I don't know, whatever the first day of fall is, don't be surprised.
No.
Those are some great questions. Do people have any other questions? Because those are some real good ones, and what have you.
Yes.
Other questions that you might have? Because I know, like I said, you dropped some good ones. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Go ahead.
Do you journal?
That's a good question. Do I journal? You know what? I do a little bit of journaling, and Quotes and Notes has that journal element to it because, again, after you go through the quote and the logic and rationale, there's a space for you. I actually do a little bit of journaling. Sometimes I'll put stuff in the notes feature of my phone, and then, from harking on, the origins of hip hop, I don't walk around with a whole backpack full of composition books, but I do have a couple composition books and other different pieces that friends of mine have gifted me where, I write a lot of my ideas on there. So and I think, and I'll say this regarding journaling. Journaling is actually a good practice for anybody. I think sometimes you have all these ideas in your head and you think you're going to remember them and they dissipate. A simple suggestion: if your phone is handy, use your notes feature, or if you like to go old school, especially like for the musically inclined people, walk around with that composition book, and when an idea pops up, just write it down, and don't worry about writing it in publishable form, or just write it down. You can always circle back and clean it up. And even like on the social science end, for people that go to counseling and things along those lines, they have journaling as one of those components to help you through, because you can only keep so much in your head. You gotta figure out a way to let stuff out. So whether you purchase a journal, or whether you get a composition book, or you use your notes feature, the bottom line is, there's a passage that says write it down and make it plain. And sometimes that's a good thing. Just make some of your stuff more concrete. But journaling is definitely something that I do. And it's something I encourage people to do in general, and not just because you're trying to publish something. Just use it to, get your ideas out there. If you're feeling frustrated about something, instead of knocking somebody upside the head, just go ahead and write it down somewhere. And then when you calm down and get your mind right, now you can come back and look and really process how you're feeling and all those types of things. So journaling is definitely a good thing. Definitely a good thing.
Personally, I don't like to write. Never have, never been interested unless it's a sign. For the most part, I've always been a deep thinker, and I just, when I'm to myself, I just, you just vibe out. Be it music that you just bounce off the walls, or it could be something that, I guess after my mother had passed, certain things like prompt you, because you're trying to grow every day. Yeah. And you look at some people, you like, you just don't have the energy for it, because you don't grew from a lot of people, and you understand why you like it. So, I commend you. Just being consistent with your writing, and just it really blows my mind, because it's wow, a lot of people do like to write, I mean, I don't mind reading, but it's hard. But I will do.
And here's the beauty about all that. Writing is just one aspect. Like I said before, I have an audiobook series, and even let's say if you're not the person that wants to walk around with a bag of composition books, the beauty with technology, hit the voice notes feature on your phone and just start talking. And then go ahead and run it back. And after you laugh, when you see how silly you sound, go ahead and run it back again and really see what is it that I'm really saying. No, and that's like I said, that's the beauty with technology. Some people are traditionalists where you have something printed, but then you can have something that's in an ebook form, which I want to say the baseball book, Nothing Minor, is also an ebook. Some people do audiobook where you just sit back and listen or sit back and vibe. So the beauty is now with technology, there's different ways, there's different pathways for you to get there. And I would just say use the pathways that you're most comfortable with, and every once in a while challenge yourself with a pathway you normally don't choose. It's kind of like on the education end where, like when I'm prepping students for a standardized test, there's nothing wrong with the lane that you operate in, but every once in a while, relative to whatever test, you have to move a little bit differently. So now, if every once in a while, if you're not the biggest reader, but every once in a while, I can read a shorter reader, or what have you, now that opens you up to other things. So there's nothing wrong. If you're not the biggest reader, okay, cool. Listen to an audiobook. There's nothing wrong with that. Or if you don't feel like, I don't want to look at what other people said, I want to focus on what I'm saying, go ahead and hit record and start talking. And then go ahead and play it and run it back. There's nothing wrong with that. I think sometimes people are so rigid, well, if you don't do it A, B, and C, there's something wrong. And it's like, nah. Because if people only did things a certain way, think about the lack of innovation.
That's true.
Think about the space that we're in today, for crying out loud. And what have you. So, there's different ways to kind of encourage your creative thinking. But again, to bring it back, you've got your traditional printed route. But if you don't want to go that route, listen to something. Or if you don't feel like reading and listening to what other people said, why don't you start talking it into your phone and record it if you can. Or go old school and hit record and play and go ahead and start yapping. Or go ahead and carry around that composition book and just jot some things down. And don't do stuff because you think it's going to go to print. Just do it as a constructive release. Then you can go back and revisit some stuff and ask yourself, hey, do I want to go in this direction? I want to do something different. So it's okay to be flexible. It's okay to be flexible. But definitely a good question. Other questions, because y'all are asking some good ones. It's like, yes.
This is a two-part question right here. So, first question,
She's ready to order. Okay, just let me know.
Okay, so first question is, as far as, because I heard you say there's a difference between somebody that writes a book and there's a difference between a person that's an author, okay? So, me personally, I've never been a writer like she said. I've never, even when I was in school, I hated writing. I hated going to that class. So, but at the same time, as a DJ and as being in the music industry for 23 years, I realized with the artists, right? Because to me, artists is kind of similar to people that write. When they write lyrics,
They are.
right? It's kind of similar, right?
They are.
So what I noticed is the best form of music comes from pain, comes from things that people will read
That was
through.
my next question for him.
It was,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's correct, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think, right? Come from what you went through. When people write and they write through pain, would that consider them being an author? Of like if they like use me for example, right? I want to write a book, but I want to write a book on my life as a DJ, of the things I went through, the journey that I went through to get to where I'm at now. With me starting as a DJ, as it being a hobby, and then me being an international DJ to where I'm at now. Being able to see the world with my craft, right? So I want to be able to share that in a book with people so they can be able to, read on my journey and see what I went through. Just to see your life journey to show people, that you can conquer anything that you go through, as long as you stay persistent and consistent. But that wouldn't consider me as an author, right?
I'm gonna handle that.
To me, the biggest difference is anybody can write, but as an author, it's a different level and a different purpose. And one of the things that I've said in different interviews and what have you is, for me, I try to be with any of the books I've done or any of the audiobooks is be authentic and be accessible. So what does that mean to me? being authentic is exactly how it sounds. Be open and share a little bit of who you are and that type of thing, and be accessible, meaning regardless if you're writing something academically or just trash talking or what have you, do as best as you can to talk with somebody instead of at somebody. Anybody can write. It's just like there's a difference between a singer and a vocalist. Anybody can sing, but a vocalist is just something a little bit different. So there's nothing wrong with being a writer. There's nothing wrong with being a writer. And technically anyone can write. I can write a one-word sentence, and I'm writing. But it's different when you're an author, or it's different when I can sing a tune, but when I'm a vocalist, it just hits a little bit different. And I think that's the biggest thing. Just like with what you do as a DJ, anyone can push play and play a record. Seriously, anyone can hit play, turn the volume up. But it's different when you're a DJ because you're mastering the beats per minute. You're mastering the transition. You're mastering how you go across different genres and create that seamless blend. You're reading the energy in the room and all that type of stuff. You see what I'm saying? Anyone can play music.
That's true.
Everyone can't DJ.
Right.
It's just different levels to it.
That's true. That's so true.
And then the second thing that I would suggest to you at the point when you do your memoir, don't think you have to put everything in one book. I think that's the biggest mistake. You don't have to put everything in one book. You don't. You could talk about the first segment. When did you realize this is where you wanted to go? Your next segment, the early years, the bumps, bites, and bruises until you started figuring it out. And then you can talk about when you started elevating. That's like 3 books right there. You don't have to put everything in one book. I think that's a common mistake that a lot of people like. I gotta put everything. No, you don't. No, you don't. Heck, Star Wars had what, 9 editions, right? Like real talk. Even the original Star Wars, with Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, it was the same story, but they broke it up into 3 parts, right? So they broke it up in 3 parts and let's do the prequel to explain how we got to episodes 4, 5, and 6. And let's do the other ones, how we got to episodes 7, 8, and 9. Then we're gonna do these little insert stories. So don't think you gotta put everything in one book. That would be one of the biggest suggestions I would give to anybody that's writing.
So that's what makes you who you.
Yeah, but hopefully, does that help answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, it's like you're gonna give us the soundtrack to your life, and then he's gonna give us like the abstract.
Right.
You know, both of y'all are different artists. You just gotta spin it like you said in a way where your audience enjoys it and knows it, because no one gets it right then and there. That's what's wrong with the young people now. They think everything is like so just no. Except for whooping.
Well, like I said, this is just something for anybody, and I'm glad you raised that question. Don't think you gotta put everything in one book. And here's another thing, that's reading your audience. Like, even when I look at the lengths of my books, I think the longest book I've done is maybe 100 pages. But I was very intentional because I know there's some people, and I'll be blunt, my first 2 books didn't have page counts to it. You wanna know why? Because sometimes people look at the page counts, that's too long. I'm serious.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm serious. And like you were saying, sometimes reading feels like a chore. But the first 2 books I did, I intentionally did not put page counts.
Right.
Because if I don't put page counts, that eliminates a barrier to reading.
Yeah, that's true.
And so using that and knowing that, there's some people that can read the 200, 300 page book, but I know that's not everybody that I get into contact with. And I'll be honest, when you asked me earlier about authors for different books, there's a book that I go to periodically called As a Man Thinketh, which kind of talks about the concepts that I really adopted in quotes and notes about what you put in your head is going to show up in some way, shape, or form. You want to know how long that book is? That book is like 60 pages. So you see where I'm going with this. Every masterpiece doesn't have to be triple digits. And I know some people get caught up in things like the word counts, and I'm like, man, just tell the story. And that's it, just tell the story. If you do it in 60 pages, you do it in 80 pages, you do it in 100 or whatever, so be it. But don't feel like you have to. And now, like I touched base earlier, in regards to how you publish and whatever, so it's so many different pathways now. If you want to be traditional, that's fine. I'm traditional enough in how I set things up, but I don't have to stick with tradition. And think about the 4 books I've done. Think about authors that stick in one genre. I've done poetry, I've done motivation, encouragement, I've done sports, and I've done a think piece. I choose not to limit myself with my writing, so why should you? Good questions. Anyone have some other questions? And as a side note, please try the old fashioned. It's really good.
How much
Like
is the coffee?
we're going to talk about price points in just a moment.
Wait a minute. How do you purchase the coffee?
But other questions, because y'all have some really good questions, seriously. And while it's like, while we're in this intimate setting, in this great setting, please, if you've got questions, ask.
Wonderful.
It is
Yeah, we're
fine.
drinking the coffee now. It's good.
Yeah, so what they're talking about is the, like I was saying earlier, with the partnership I have with Fonte's Coffee, with the AuthorASnorton blend,
Wonderful.
the bourbon infused, you definitely want to check it. And like I told people before, yes, the alcohol gets burned off in the process. So no, don't come up on me with a flask or 2. Don't do it. I can't help you, but I can help you with the bag of that. And of course, the venue here, Maracas Bar has it, so definitely want to check that out too. So are there other questions that people have? Because y'all, like I said, raised some really good questions, some really good points. Hopefully some things that you can kind of take with you that you feel are going to help you, whether you decide to go in this route or just to be more aware, and then you come in contact with other authors, types of things you want to ask and pick apart and what have you. Are there any other questions that you've got? Because I said you all raised some really good questions and some good points. Yes, sir.
I know you're tired of these questions.
No, you're good. No, I'm good.
But I'm gonna wing you to this. But how long does it take? Like how long should it take for you to write your book?
Oh gosh, that's a good question.
Hold on, one more thing too.
Okay.
And then what's the how difficult it is to get it published?
Ooh, that's a good question.
So the 2 questions are, how long does it take to write a book to get it published ready, and then how long does it take it to publish? I'll start with the books that I've done. Each book has had its own timeline. The first book that I did, Deeper, writing it to get it published ready only took me maybe 2 months. And I'm gonna tell you why it didn't take that long. Like you said earlier, sometimes some of your most creative times come through when you're going through pain. It was a painful time I was going through back in 2016. I ain't gonna lie. I'll just be blunt. It was a breakup at the time, and I'm trying to keep it professional. I was hot and bothered.
That's that pain,
Yes,
right?
baby.
That's that pain.
I was hot and bothered,
Just
and
say
being
it,
hot and
let go.
bothered gave me the fuel to get it done. And I'm gonna tell you how hot and bothered I was. This is something I've never said before. So I got it written in about 2 months, and I used, at the time it was CreateSpace, but now it's KDP through Amazon, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So the date that I got my proofs, and you can run this back, and they may get upset, but that's their problem. The day I got my proofs was on the birthday of my ex. I ain't gonna lie. That was petty. I know, it was petty.
I'm
It's
glad you
anything.
laughed.
But I can laugh about it now because it was like 10 years ago. It's like, get over it. But anyway, yeah, so the first book took me about 2 months to get published ready. And then self-publishing, you just have to pick the right self-publisher, and you still have to make sure that you're doing something that's traditional in regards to how it flows and what have you, in regards to how it's set up. So that first only took 2 months. Now, 9 Stories of Faith, even though it's only like 9 chapters, because you can tell 9 different testimonials, that took me almost a year. And the reason why is after I recorded and would listen, I was trying to make sure I was getting things right, because when people open up about this is what I'm living with, you're trying to get that right. The third book, Nothing Minor, technically from July of 2019 until September 2019, I already had everything. But then, of course, we'll remember that ugly thing called the pandemic, and people couldn't do anything. So I'm sitting, and I'll tell you the backstory of how Nothing Minor got published, because technically I wasn't going to do a book on baseball. But what ended up happening is September 2019, I just finished doing college football coverage. It was a Friday night game, Wake Forest against North Carolina, because that's the college football team that I'm credentialed to cover. I flew from Charlotte, North Carolina the next day back to New Jersey to visit my folks. And I paid to go to my high school reunion. You know, you pay your whatever, 30, 40, 50 bucks or your plate. But I wasn't gonna go. I was like, why am I going? And my mom was like, just go and see what happens. I'm like, fine, I'll just go for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then get the blank out of there. So I go to my high school reunion, and one of my classmates asked me this question, when is your book on baseball gonna come out? And I stopped. I'm like, you've been reading the articles I've done? Oh yeah, we've been reading the articles and coverage, and I'm sitting here like, you never know like what you put out there, who's paying attention to it. So if I hadn't gone to my high school reunion, Nothing Minor would probably have never come out. It would have probably never come out. And that one, technically I had all the content from July of 2019 until September, but I got that published like in July of 2020. So I'll say officially a year, but I had all the material in a couple of months. And then quotes and notes, I kind of already had it, but it took me a few months to get it ready, and I'll be blunt and tell you when I got everything uploaded. I got quotes and notes uploaded the night before. I was sitting in my hotel room in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the night before, it was late September 2022, the night before I covered the Wake Forest Clemson game that went to double overtime. The night before is when I uploaded everything for quotes and notes. So all I'm gonna say is there's no blueprint. Like when you start writing, it should take you a certain amount of time. Only thing I'm gonna tell you is you take the time you need to make sure you're saying what you need to say, the takeaways that you're hoping the reader gets, you feel like they're getting, get it edited, get someone who has like at least at minimum a degree in English. Don't go to any of these fly-by-night, oh, I've published stuff and they haven't done anything and end up stealing your money, because unfortunately there's some of those entities out there. But get somebody credible to edit your work. If you self-publish, I will say this, the positive about self-publish is that you can really control how things are stated, but there's a lot of responsibility on you, from your marketing to your press to all these types of things. You gotta do a lot of the work behind it. Whereas with a traditional publisher, and I'll say this, the only issue I have with a traditional publisher, they will edit based on a formula that works for them, which means your voice may get diluted a little bit. And then of course, because they're doing all the work for you, they're gonna take a bigger cut. So, I know I gave a lot of detail, but keep it simple. Each book has a life of its own. Don't feel bad if it takes you a year, 2 years, 3 years. There's some people that take 4 or 5 years before they get something where they're comfortable to get it published. And then if you self-publish, do your research on your self-publishing options, your online placement. Are they being placed on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, other things? When you try to get your books put in different bookstores, especially your independent bookstores, read the fine print. Some of them have a legit pushback against KDP, Amazon, so be aware of that. But it's one of those that can be done, and you know, you learn by doing, and you learn something new every day. Even those of us that have done this for a minute, yeah, we're still learning. We're still learning this. Don't think I have a number of answers, but I don't have every answer. And some of the answers you might find out before I do. So that comes back to me. I don't have a problem sharing what I know to give you a good point of reference. But like I said, don't feel like, man, I got this idea. I've been sitting on it for 2 years. Okay, get that nudge to start putting it in your composition books or your notes feature on your phone, or just talking into your phone and recording it, and then run it back, and it's like, what is it that I'm really trying to say? Then once you've got that together, get some help with someone proofreading or editing and making sure it's published ready, so if you go the self-publishing route, you're making as credible as possible if you're going to pitch it to an agent or whatever to get a bigger publishing deal. That looks a whole lot better, and when they do make changes, they're not diluting your work to this point where it's like you read, it's like, this doesn't sound like me. Like, you know, you're still trying to sound like you. See what I'm saying? It's different when people want to amplify how you sound versus you need to sound like this. You see what I'm saying? Like, if you're saying this, I'm like, okay, this is the idea you're trying to bring out. How do we clean up to make your idea come out a little bit more? That's different versus we're going to do it this way. Because doing it this way means I'm discounting what you've done.
Yes.
And that takes away the meaning, impact, and purpose. Now it looks like, you know, you went from trying to knock somebody out to being a punching bag. Just saying. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. I was just going to ask if you're still taking questions. This is very interesting to me because my sister is a published author. She's written 2 children's books, and so I'm next up, and I'm going to write a book. I am a mental health advocate and about my life, and I know I might have missed this information before, but I'm just so curious. You gave different examples of ways that you can get your information published. I have a close friend, he's self-published. My sister, she published through someone else. Luckily, her things didn't get watered down. She's an artist and she draws. So she did a children's book and she illustrated and drew the pictures and they just did it for her. I'm not sure which way she went, but for me, when I write my book, in your opinion, since you are a successful author, what's the best way? Because I'm starting from scratch, and I mean scratch. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Here's what I say. First off, give a round of applause for people getting ready to make that next step and next journey. So let's go ahead and start there. And not only that, the topics that you cover, I'm going to say this, even though other people have talked about it, nobody can talk about it like you can. And there's people you can reach that all these other people haven't reached. So I'm glad you're in that space. In regards to what's the best way to do it, like I kind of shared earlier, when you self-publish, do your homework on the self-publishing entity. So here's what I can share with you. A lot of people use KDP Amazon, and we kind of know why, because everybody's buying stuff on Amazon. And that is a positive from the standpoint, if your audience leans that way, to go that way. The problem that you're going to run into is you have to understand there's a universe of people that do not order online and do not go to your big box Barnes & Noble or Walmart or Target. They will go to your independent bookstores, which is a side note. Your independent bookstores are critically important because they will give you opportunities that your big box won't. But in reading the fine print, some of your independent bookstores, if you self-publish on KDP or Amazon, they're not going to take your books because KDP Amazon has done something, and you can read between the lines, in the purchasing landscape that kind of leaves independent bookstores kind of out there. So, can you self-publish? Yes. There are different self-publishing platforms which will allow you to be automatically on Amazon, automatically on Barnes & Noble, that are more indie bookstore friendly. So I'm not saying you can't do KDP Amazon, but if you do, be aware that if you're trying to get your books into certain independent bookstores, which I encourage you do, you may run into some issues. So do your research on that. I would say talk with colleagues or peers of yours who have self-published and get their feedback. This is what's worked for me. This is what hasn't worked for me. But there's no, again, it's kind of like, it's not absolute. Like, if you don't go here, you're going to run into trouble. It's like, if you go this route, be aware. And once you're aware, you're giving yourself a better idea as to how you're going to move and how you're going to operate. But a great question. But like I said, anyone that takes that plunge or that jump or what have you, man, you got to look for them.
Who make the most money? Do you self-publish? If you self-publish, do you make the most money?
That's a good question. Where do you make your revenue? I'm going to say it depends, and let me simplify it. If you go self-publishing, what you have to understand is that you are responsible for everything. You are responsible for creating your press and media kit, which is a surprise that a lot of authors don't have one, which behooves me. You are responsible for communicating with your media outlets, radio, television, podcasts, newspapers, online magazines. You are responsible, unless you have a team that you can outsource this to, you are responsible for meeting with that bookstore, getting that booking. You are responsible for doing the research on your book festivals in order to be a participating author, in order to be a speaker. So there's a lot that you have to do, but here's the positive in that. When you are, let's say, at a book festival and you get a chance to speak, and now you've captured that audience, you're not paying other people to do it. You've just paid your fee to be a part of that. So you have, as a self-published person, you have to do a lot of the legwork that your traditional publishers will do. But your traditional publishers are going to take a bigger percentage. So,
What's the percentage?
good question. Here's a breakdown of percentages that I can tell you. Here in general, when you put your book in an independent bookstore, in general, it's a 60-40 split, which means the author gets 60% of the sale, the bookstore gets 40% of the sale. But that actually kind of makes sense because the bookstore has to stay in business in order to operate. And they're trying to make sure not only you have opportunities, but other authors have opportunities. Like I said, indie bookstores give you the opportunities that other bookstores or entities won't. So it's in general a 60-40 split. Okay? That's cool because now think about when people come to that indie bookstore, it might be someone from a book club. It might be someone who's a fellow author that wants to collaborate. It might be someone who felt like, oh, I never could write a book, and because they've talked with you and seen you, now they get motivated and inspired to do something. Those are things you can't put a price tag on. When you go with a traditional publisher, unless you're kind of already a big name, you're probably, and this is an estimation, when they take away everything from what they're doing with marketing, promoting, contacting the media, getting you placement, all that, it may be something more like a 30-70 split. But then again, but the positive is potentially because of the volume you get with a traditional publisher, you can make more. But that's not always absolute because there's indie authors who self-publish that come out better than people that have your publishing deal. Because remember, your publishing deal is almost like a record deal. It's based on what they project, not necessarily what you actually do. And if they're projecting you here and you sell here, guess who's taking an L? You are. So to a degree, sometimes with your traditional authors, it's almost like the record industry. Which is why, think about it, in the record industry, why do you think so many people in the record business are trying to do independent stuff? They're going to make theirs over the long haul. So it comes back to one of the points I said earlier in regards to people write a book and they get frustrated because it doesn't take off or whatever. You gotta understand, writing is a long haul business. It is you're running a marathon. You're not running a sprint. There are times you have to sprint, but if you think your first book, you're gonna make what Michelle Obama makes, Barack Obama makes, Oprah Winfrey makes, Joe Jones, now I know who Joe Jones is, I just said that to be funny. Joe Jones that's probably not gonna happen. But here's what I can say from what I've been able to do. While I'm not making 50, 1,100 million, the impact I'm making when someone buys 9 Stories of Faith and they just got out the pen and they read the chapter about someone who transitioned out after serving 10, 15 years. That's something that I can't put a dollar amount on. You see what I'm saying? All four of my books are self-published. Three of them are on KDP Amazon. That's who I use. Praise States with transition to KDP Amazon. One I use Ingram Spark. And I'll say this, Ingram Spark is a little bit more indie receptive compared to KDP Amazon. I'm not saying you have to go that route because there's some other good self-publishing entities that are a lot better received by your indie bookstores, but I know for a fact, for like a number of the bookstores that have my books in there, because I'm on Ingram Spark, no question. Yeah. Oh, no problem. No, and my thing is this, no, like the adage is, we didn't get here by ourselves. Like, I didn't just come out 2017 knowing everything, and I'm still learning stuff. But there are people that help me, and if you want this area to grow to where people who have a voice and are trying to use it are able to do so, and as best as possible, reach the people that are trying to reach and impact the lives that you have the potential of doing, you gotta be open to sharing some stuff. You can't keep it all to yourself. It's just like, you can't eat everything on the plate. You gotta share every once in a while. You got to. Yeah. So again, great questions. Everybody here has raised some really good questions, some really good points. Keep them going as long as you got them. Yes.
Let's see. The question I had was kind of similar to what you were talking about as far as the percentages. It kind of reminds me of the music industry if you have a manager or you don't have a manager. If you don't have a manager, you got to do everything yourself. If you have a manager, the manager is supposed to go and promote you and get you gigs. But the question I wanted to say was, if I go with a publisher, right, and I have to give him 30%, right?
Well, you might get 30%.
I might get 30%?
The split's gonna be like 30-70, basically.
30-70, and it might be him 70, me 30?
Pretty much. The publisher's gonna get the lion's share of your money, of what you bring in.
Now, will the publisher take care of my, like, hardcovers, books? They'll take care of all of that?
Yeah, the good thing is,
With going with a traditional publisher, the reason why they take a bigger percentage of what you bring in, they're doing all the work. They're doing everything. They're designing your cover, whether it's a soft cover or hard cover. They're the ones getting your info out to the media. They're the ones connecting with the bookstores and book festivals. So, I mean, yeah, you're paying them to do the work. And because they're doing all this work, they're going to take a bigger cut of what you do. And like I said before, just like in the record industry, and I don't know if they still do it, they give the artists in advance, and it's a forecast, like when you feel like you're going to do a certain amount. It's the same principle. Like even your big name people who got their book deals, they were given in advance because they're figuring you're going to sell a certain amount to where this is going to cover it. And if they do more than that, okay, they have an adjustment. If they do less than that, they make another adjustment where they're taking more. And again, with, like I said, with self-publishing, you've got to either have a team to get this stuff, or you got to be able to do it yourself. And this is just me. It's good to know how it's supposed to look. So whenever you outsource something, or whenever you get to the point where you want to go big publisher, you know what it looks like, and those conversations can be a little different. And we've seen all the horror stories on what behind the music or unsung or whatever, when people didn't read the contracts and whatever. Like, I'll just be blunt. I'm fortunate that because of my press background, I can do my press and media kits. I can reach out to different media outlets. And yeah, I've been able to do interviews on radio or interviews on television or whatever. So for me, right now, I'm not gonna outsource press and media contact. That's part of what I do. Now, Lord willing, if there's a point to where it's too much for me because it's like I'm gone every day, all right, I'm gonna get somebody to do it. But at least the thing is, whenever I get to a point where I get someone to do it, I know what it's supposed to look like. So anyone that's starting off, and if you go the self-publishing route, learn enough of how it's supposed to look like, so whenever you outsource it, you can keep a watchful eye. You got a point of reference. Is this how it's supposed to look? If it's looking different, we have to have a conversation. Because you're not only just talking about your money, you're talking about your credibility and whatnot.
And how much, like when you start out, how much should you charge for a book to sell a book?
Oh, gosh, that's another good question. What you charge for a book is arbitrary, but this is what I do. This is what I do. And I'm being honest. Technically, I could charge more for my books if I wanted to, because there's people who have written books my length or slightly longer that probably charge more. But here's my philosophy. I know the power of reading. Reading helps you build your vocabulary, your critical thinking skills, your creative skills. And like I shared earlier, sometimes when you see the number of pages and whatever, that can be a barrier to people. So for me, I'm willing to charge a little bit less, because if I charge less, that means it's more accessible. If it's more accessible, I can reach more people. If I reach more people, that could be the next generation of creative thinkers. The same creative type of thinkers who got this building started. The same creative thinkers who the radio station are with. The same creative thinkers who are making those constructive challenges to what they see is not right in our communities and society. That's a hell of a lot more significant than me charging more. Do you see where I'm going with this? I could, and maybe one day I'll do one of those coffee table books, you know, with all, like the Ansel Adams, like all the photos. I may charge a little bit more. But for me, the audience I'm trying to reach are people who have an interest in reading, but they get deterred by the length or this or that. So if I eliminate or minimize those barriers, that means it's a greater likelihood. And then, like I said before, I'm kind of all over the place, but that's kind of how I am anyway, if you really know me. So now, like I said, quotes and notes is the think piece, because some people might need that reset. And maybe that reset unlocks the door for whatever they want to do. They want to open up a business, they want to write a book, they want to paint a picture, something constructive. That's more meaningful to me. Or nothing minor, and collaborating with Emery Rose Photography. Now all of a sudden it's like, wow, there's black women who do photography, maybe I want to be a photographer. Oh, there's black folk in sports journalism, maybe that's what I want to do. And now some of the narratives that we see that are out there, which are a bunch of crap, maybe there's someone who's more credible that can be in those spaces. Or 9 Stories of Fate, when you do an interview with someone who lives with bipolar disorder, but they're a sports journalist. So you can still live with an issue and still do something. So again, you ask a good point. You kind of have to know your audience, but for me, I don't mind charging a little bit less for my work if it means it's going to be more accessible and can lead to that type of impact and those type of game changers. That's just kind of how I think. I know everyone doesn't think that way. How you think is your business, but that's how I think with my work. Even with the coffee, and I'll just be blunt with the coffee partnership, and yeah, we know with the tariffs and all that, it's an interesting time, But our partners, when you order online, they've kept that price point, same price as day one. And when people order the coffee online, when they order $60 or more, it's free shipping. And they're also an authorized reseller, so when I tell people you want to order online, get 2 bags in a book. Your shipping's already taken care of.
Okay.
That helps save some people a few coins here and there. You see where I'm going with this? Like, yeah, it's business. Yeah, it's business and all that, but you can do business and still have something of a conscience. So I can sleep well at night. No, okay, I'm not charging 20 and 25 for like a 10-page book. Like, what the fill in the blank? No, I'm serious. What the fill in the blank? Why would I do that? Why would I do that? And the last point on that is, like I said, one of the books that I've read that influenced me, As a Man Thinketh, and technically it's universal. It's not just how men think. Women kind of think the same way at times. That book is like a 60-page book, and I think at the time I purchased it was like $7 or $8. But that book has helped me in regards to being conscious of what I allow to have residency in my head. And even that author wasn't writing for, yeah, it is to a degree the revenue stream, but the bigger thing is the purpose. So that also ties with your question. There's a difference between a writer and an author. Anybody can write. Everyone isn't an author because that demands a bigger purpose. And that purpose is, to me, like I said, helping people build their vocabulary, helping people with their critical thinking, even probably bigger than that, your creative thinking. Peace of mind, understanding the power, importance of your voice, understanding everybody has a voice. Like, the famous line of the Sorcerer Word, South's got something to say. Technically, everybody's got something to say. But maybe the way you're putting it is help that person get the confidence to say what they need to say. But I'll never know that if I overcharge. Wow, sound like Harris One, my philosophy.
I kind of feel like you give me like spoken word vibes, so
Oh, I've done a little bit. Like I said, the audiobook series, the Author's Mixtape, that's spoken word. Like, seriously. And here's the backstory on that. It's all freestyle. True story. God, my witness. So shouts to Third Level Entertainment as well as Canis Major Digital. And I know I gotta go back in the studio at some point, but literally how we did that, we did like 4 editions of it. No, 5. So the very first one, the recording companies, the owners' daughters wrote down random topics, and I had to pull them out of a hat. I had to come up with the topic. I went straight to the booth and was like, all right, here's the topic. Let me just go ahead and say something. And we did it all in one take. So literally the entire series is stuff that, you know how most people go in the studio and learn how stuff written down? Any of that stuff that you listen to, we just did that and made it up and did it in one take. And yeah, so the whole spoken word vibe, yeah, that's pretty much how that was done. Absolutely.
did you play chess?
Not well. I'm good at tic-tac-toe and checkers.
Wow.
Maybe hopscotch if I stretch out and that's how I pull a hamstring, but that's about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
feel like most authors, right? It's just like I grew up in an era where hip hop was lyrics.
Mm.
You know what I'm
I
saying?
know we grew up at the same time.
Right.
No.
Right. So you know what I'm saying? So I felt like certain artists, like, a Jay-Z or a Biggie, they could be authors because words come to them. So like just like with you, like you was able to go in there and freestyle your poetry because words come to you quick, fast, and hurry off your head. Mm-hmm. And only people that's a talent that you have.
It is. I'm gonna say this. It is a talent that you have. And I'll tell you something else. When you let your inhibitions down, and you let I'm not this or I'm not that. No, when you let your guard down, you'd be surprised what you can do. And I'll tell you who else, like in regards to that, like to me, a key hip hop artist where the jump sounded like poetry, he could do poetry goes all day and day is Common. Hands down.
Oh, yeah.
Hands down, Common.
Oh, yeah.
Like especially like real talk, especially if you listen to the album he and Pete Rock did last summer. And I'll tell you my favorite track on that. You know, There Is a God with Jennifer Hudson on that. And if you close your eyes and listen, that is like straight poetry, spoken word, gospel right there. That's like going to church. Like for real. That's like a 3-4 minute church sermon right there. Like if you just close your eyes and listen and what have you, to me, that's like, man, that song right there just does something. Even if you're not faith-based, just to slow things down and just imagine what it could be. That's real.
Like Jill Scott, Mos Def.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Jill, Mos Def.
The Roots, you know, all of them, they're real good. I like them.
Like Nas.
Oh,
Nas.
man, look,
Yes.
even I'll still bump
Yes.
Illmatic.
Yes.
I mean,
Oh,
especially like, you know, the track that he and AZ do, Life's a Fill in the Blank.
Yeah.
And if you close your eyes and listen to that, first off, it's a great use of the Gap Band sample, Yearning for Your Love. That's a great use of that sample.
UGK.
Or even when you dig into the crates, Jay Dilla's remix for Runnin' from the Far Side, which used that same sample. That is like, if you listen to that, it's like a beautiful remix.
You know what they had up there? You remember the group that sang Cool Like That?
Yeah, Diggable Plants.
Yeah,
Diggable
they
Plants.
had them on, and I was like, man, that's some music, you know.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like talking about, and you guys know this because you deal with music, there's creative artists that are doing that. They just don't get the same type of, because like growing up, you know this from growing up top, you would hear, you know, My Adidas or Rock the Bells, but you also hear Public Enemy and X-Clan and other artists on the mainstream R&B hip hop station. You would hear all that.
Right.
So you had balance. You had the folks that were talking, you know, I'm the baddest and this and that, talking about, you know, the women love me, which I hope you all do, ladies, thank you. And all that, but then it was like, then you had the preaching and teaching with groups like, you know, X-Clan and PE and other artists, and then something happened like in the late 90s, early 2000s, where you got away from that balance, and all of a sudden, don't get me wrong, like if you like to blaze, that's fine, but you can't be doing that all day and day. You got to do stuff like get a job, you know, get something to eat, whatever. You can talk about, I have all these women, but you might not have the budget or bandwidth to keep that up. So it's like, you got to talk about something else. You got to talk about something else. So it just seemed like, getting back on the whole spoken word piece, there are artists that are out there that don't always get the exposure. And that's what's important about, let's say, platforms like the one you're on, or even at a point where you can do a poetry or spoken word piece. And I know for us, we don't use Audible, we use more of the music piece. So if you type my name in, I'm on Pandora, I'm on Spotify, I'm on SoundCloud, I'm on iTunes, Apple Music, Google, Shazam, Deezer.
Do you
Like,
play the instruments?
do I play any instruments? I still play trombone a little bit. Once upon a time, my sister had me experiment with piano. And note the word on experiment. Now, my sister's the better musician. My sister is piano, saxophone, violin, I taught her how to play trombone, and a couple others. And my nieces, my oldest niece still does percussion. Youngest niece plays the flute. So they are deeper in regards to playing instruments. But do I play? Yeah, I still break out the trombone every once in a while and play something. Other instrument I'll play is like play, volume. That's about it. But that's really about it. But but like I said, all of you brought some great questions, and I hope that, you know, what I've shared has given you some things to think about, and it doesn't mean you have to do everything to the letter, but it gives you something to think about. It gives you a point of reference. But I'll say this as we kind of wind down the talking part, because I know I need to support the bar and get something to eat because I'm a little hungry, but I'm going to go ahead and get another one of these. No, I am. I know you laughed all good, but I'm saying I got to get something to eat and support. Like I said, patronize the venue and get another one of those old fashions. They were on point. But I'm going to say this as we wind down. Here are the takeaways I hope people have. And it's bigger than just what I'm doing. I'll say this: if you've ever thought about writing, do more than just think about it. Just start building up the habit. And when you write down something, don't write it as if you're trying to publish it. Just write to express what you're thinking and what have you. You can always go back and clean it up. Be aware of the tools that you can use. Like I said before, use the notes feature in your phone if you don't want to carry around composition books. Use your voice notes. There's so many different tools for you to be able to write and record, and you just have to develop what works for you. The next thing is, if you decide you want to go that route and get something published, don't think you got to put everything in one book. Knowing how today's readers are, it probably is better to break it up into smaller pieces. And now all of a sudden, instead of doing one big book, now you got 3. Be authentic and be accessible, and speak to what you know, and use enough of the vocabulary of the field or whatever to let people know you're credible. But do what you can to talk with them instead of at them. On the self-publishing end, do your research and just be aware of your options. There are some solid self-publishing options out there, but kind of be aware of the fine print. And regardless, I'm going to say this, and this is paraphrasing one of the quotes I put. You know, there's somebody waiting on you. There's somebody waiting on you to write that children's book, because only you can reach them. There's someone waiting on you to compile your memoir or your series, because there's someone waiting on you to hear your story, to encourage and motivate and drive them to doing something greater. Those are really the basic things, and other than that, hopefully I look the same in person as I do online. Hopefully better. But that's about it. So yeah, again, thank you to everybody that pulled up, the people that wanted to be here. They're here in spirit, because there's definitely a good spirit and vibe. Shouts again to the folks here at Maracas. Again, if this is your first time coming here, please do not let it be your last. They have some great creative things. I know I come here on Tuesdays for the Taco Tuesday. I know I'd be out here on Tuesdays for the Taco Tuesdays, but for real, they're trying to do some good stuff here, and you want to support good people trying to do good things. So let's please make sure to do that. And on that note, take care. Look forward to seeing you soon. I'm gonna stick around because, like I said, I do need to order something to eat, and I'm definitely gonna order another old fashioned. That's why I'm over 21. I'm grown.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Hey man, I appreciate everybody. So